Despite being hospitalized with dietary restrictions, Michelle snuck a bunch of snacks into her room and gobbled them down. If you keep this up, it could be life-threatening. When I scolded her, Michelle shouted back,
If you had cooked healthy meals, I wouldn't have gotten sick.
"Stop taking it out on me." Then she spat this at me.
Look at you. You are just like a parasite of my dad.
With a sneer and a furious glare, she stared me down.
Just get divorced and disappear.
Okay. As I returned to the car, I got a call from Tom. I told him about the altercation with Michelle, and he yelled at me.
Michelle is sick. You need to be more supportive.
Without responding, I hung up. I decided to take a break from them and move to a hotel, but then Anna showed me this picture, and it changed my mind. As Michelle wishes, I am willing to divorce. But before that, I'm going to expose the true face of the dad she adores so much. This is going to be fun. I'm Nancy, a 45-year-old housewife. I married my colleague Tom 5 years ago. Caught up in work, I was late in my 30s. I had given up after missing chances to marry, but 7 years ago, Tom, who transferred to my department, pursued me intensely. After 2 years of dating, we got married. Tom had divorced his previous wife due to her infidelity, and he had a young daughter named Michelle. My parents and friends were concerned, but Michelle seemed innocent and adorable when I met her during our engagement, and I was ecstatic to have a child as soon as we married. Even though we weren't blood related, I was determined to care for her dearly. However, my resolve soon began to shake. At the time of our marriage, Michelle, then in 6th grade, loved video games, music, and eating. She would lie on the living room sofa, immersing herself in video games and music, constantly munching on something. Eating too many snacks will ruin your appetite for dinner. It's a common line parents say to their children, but Michelle would not listen. After all, she was constantly devouring a massive amount of snacks every day, in addition to her 3 meals. Even considering a growing appetite, she was eating 2 pancakes and 2 bags of potato chips before dinner, with a large serving of fried chicken and 2 baguettes for dinner, and it was clearly too much. Since she wasn't in any sports clubs, she naturally became quite plump. Michelle, I think you're overeating a bit. It's not good for your health, and you tend to leave vegetables and only eat fried foods and meat. When I couldn't stand it anymore and scolded her, she grimaced as if annoyed.
Leave me alone. You're not my real mom, you're just a stranger.
But Michelle cut me off before I could finish.
You might cook okay, but you really should fix your nagging, or Dad might leave you.
Her cheeky tone really got to me, but when I consulted Tom, he just laughed it off.
Come on. It's just a phase. Go easy on her.
But Michelle really eats too much, don't you think? I pleaded patiently. I think it's bad for your health to eat so much snacks. You get angry when there's no food at home, so I keep snacks stocked, but you devour them immediately, and you don't like low-calorie options like dried fruits.
I used to have a huge appetite as a kid too, but it settled down before I hit 30. Don't worry about it.
Tom laughed, looking down at his slim physique. But Tom had been in the basketball team through college. It's not really comparable because the amount of exercise was totally different, but it's hard to get through to Tom when he dotes on Michelle so much. Eventually, as Michelle entered middle school, she started hanging out with her friends who look vulgar. As Michelle started going to band concerts right before tests and not coming home until late at night, she also began piercing her ears with friends and wearing increasingly flashy clothes. Piercing that many holes as a middle schooler, and are you doing it at home too? That's just crazy. I sternly scolded Michelle. You need to pierce them in a sanitary place to avoid the risk of bacterial infection,
Nancy's such a worrywart.
Tom said leisurely next to a pouting Michelle.
It's really not a big deal.
Exactly. You might be too timid to do it yourself, but my friends and I aren't scared at all.
Michelle boasted, and I felt like holding my head in my hands. That's not the point at all.
Guess you're just out of touch with the modern fashion because you're an old lady. Dad gets it, right?
Seeking agreement, Tom gave Michelle a forced smile.
Of course. Michelle looks cute no matter what she does.
That's my dad. You always understand me.
Seeing Tom's affectionate face made me want to let them do whatever they want. Despite being a student preparing for exams, Michelle neglected her studies in favor of gaming and music, and predictably panicked before advancing to higher education. She barely made it into the lowest-ranked school in the county, but soon after enrollment, she often felt unwell. Her body felt heavy, tired, and she complained of stomach pains and nausea, even running a slight fever. When we went to the local clinic, they said it was probably stress from school life. At first, I thought so too, but as it happened repeatedly, I suggested Michelle should go to a general hospital.
I'm sensitive, you know. I hate injections and tests.
Michelle whined, and Tom agreed with her.
It's cruel to make her go unnecessarily. Let's just wait and see a little longer.
But what if it's a serious illness? Tom and I aren't home during the day. What if something happens to her? Michelle said matter-of-factly.
Why don't you just quit your job then?
Exactly. If Nancy takes care of Michelle, I'd be able to work with peace of mind. You could rush her to the hospital if needed.
I was momentarily at a loss for words. But Michelle is your daughter, Tom?
Don't be so cold. She's Nancy's daughter too, isn't she? Blood related or not.
Exactly. Dad earns more than you anyway. No one would miss you at work, right?
Disheartened as I found fulfillment in my job, but arguing against, for the sake of our daughter, was tough. Reluctantly, I filed for resignation at my workplace. Then, Michelle began to treat me like a servant. As soon as she returned from school, it started.
You forgot to buy pudding. Run to the bakery by the station now. Rub my legs, I'm feeling heavy. Also, my shoulders and back too, please. Hey, why chicken soup? I'm in the mood for steak today. Throw out the chicken soup and make some steak.
When she felt unwell, her mood was even worse. She'd call me to her bedroom on her cell phone in the middle of the night because she couldn't sleep, and I had to listen to endless trivial stories.
This guy is sucking up to the teacher and it's so annoying. Hey, are you listening? Don't fall asleep.
Eventually, she'd even make unreasonable demands like healing her headache. Hey Tom, can't you do something about Michelle? Exhausted from lack of sleep and mental fatigue, I finally broke down to Tom. I understand that Michelle wants to be pampered when she is sick, but being lashed out at this much is too much for me. Tom frowned and sighed.
You are Michelle's mom. You should be able to handle this much. Kids' whims are supposed to be cute, right?
If you say so, why don't you take over on weekends then? Tom shrugged his shoulders with a troubled look.
I'm working to support you guys. Don't you get that? At least listen to your adorable daughter's requests with a smile.
Then at least, could you come home a bit earlier? I insisted desperately. Lately, you've been working late a lot, and there's more weekend work and overnight trips. Spend some more time with Michelle, will you?
It is impossible. I'm too busy. Michelle is all yours, Nancy.
Tom pushes his daughter off on me and hardly involves himself. Day by day, I started distrusting him. Tom was casual about it, but when Michelle had been sick for a year, even he started to feel the urgency.
A colleague suggested she might have a liver problem. Let's get her checked out properly at the hospital.
Okay,
He did not listen to me, but Tom's colleague told him about Michelle's health. He has changed his mind. I was frustrated, but I went with them to the hospital. After a series of tests, it turned out Michelle did have cirrhosis.
She's showing signs of jaundice and has fluid buildup. She's at grade B right now. It's not immediately life-threatening, but it has significantly worsened. Why did you let it go this far?
I am sorry.
Usually Tom and Michelle are carefree, but this time they were somber.
It seems she developed cirrhosis from hepatitis C. Can you think of a cause? Like using a piercing gun on yourself without proper sterilization, perhaps?
Yes.
Michelle gasped. See, this is what I told them. Realizing the shallowness of her actions, Michelle looked like she was about to cry and bit her lip.
Will she need surgery?
Tom asked anxiously, and the doctor answered calmly.
First, she'll be admitted for nutritional and exercise guidance. But if it continues like this, it could progress to liver cancer. It would be best to consider a liver transplant once her condition stabilizes.
Understood.
As the nurse escorted Michelle to her room, Tom and I decided to go home to prepare for her hospital stay. Driving back, Tom said,
Let's register for a living liver transplant. If we wait for a donor to appear, Michelle's condition might worsen.
That sounds right.
Thanks, Nancy.
What? I stared at Tom's profile. You're registering too, right?
Nat, I can't handle the pain.
I couldn't believe my ears.
Donors can have complications like bowel obstruction or duodenal ulcers. It would be bad if it happened to me, right? I'm the breadwinner.
But still, is it okay if it's me? I wanted to ask.
Don't worry. It's usually not life-threatening. They say the liver regenerates quickly even if a part is cut out. It's no big deal.
Tom said with a breezy smile, but I was left feeling uneasy. Yet, I couldn't just sit by and watch Michelle's condition worsen. I was the match from the compatibility tests, so I alone registered as a donor. Now, whenever Michelle's condition improves, my liver can be transplanted to her. Honestly, I was terrified, but blood-related or not, I am her mother. I wanted to be there for her, even just a little. After some time, the hospital clerk contacted us. Michelle's condition had stabilized, and they wanted to schedule the liver transplant surgery. Michelle dislikes me, so if she knew I was the donor, she might refuse. I asked the doctor to keep it a secret. Soon, the surgery date was set, and I went to the hospital for tests. I stopped by Michelle's room on the way out and was stunned. Despite being on a dietary restriction, she had brought a bunch of snack foods from the shop into her room and was devouring them. I lost my temper and scolded her sharply. You know your condition, right? If you keep this up, it could be life-threatening. Take your health seriously for once. Then Michelle blamed me as she spat out bits of snacks.
It's all your fault in the first place.
What?
If you had made healthier snacks and meals over these past 5 years, I wouldn't have gotten sick. Take some responsibility.
Her outrageous blame made me feel weak. What are you talking about? You're the one who always begged me for high-calorie foods and snacks. Stop taking your frustrations out on me. I retorted sharply, and Michelle sneered.
All you do is order me around. It's so annoying.
She said in a low voice, contorting her face in disgust.
I don't need you anymore. I don't even want to see you. Acting all high and mighty like Dad's parasite. Just get lost and disappear.
Her words, filled with hatred, struck my heart like sharp arrows. My excitement quickly cooled, and I felt a chill. Understood. I said that and left the hospital room. As I got back to the car, Tom called me on the phone, so I told him about my exchange with Michelle, only to be yelled at furiously.
What? Are you stupid? Michelle is sick. You need to be more supportive.
But
What if her condition worsens from the stress?
I felt utterly miserable. Why do I have to hear such things? Without responding, I hung up the phone and drove out of the parking lot. I went home, packed my essentials into a suitcase, and left the house. I didn't want to see their faces for a while, so I decided to stay at a hotel. The next day, I met my friend Anna at a cafe to talk about Tom and Michelle. Anna made a grim face.
I think.
She started to say but paused. After fiddling with her phone for a while, she showed me a picture. I gasped involuntarily.
You should really look into this.
Yes, thank you. I replied in a firm voice and had Anna send the picture to my phone. As I looked at it, intense anger welled up inside me and my body heated up. As Michelle wishes, I am willing to divorce. But before that, I'm going to expose the true face of the dad you adore so much. This is going to be fun. After parting with Anna, I went straight to a real estate agent and signed a contract for a weekly rental apartment. I arranged movers and transferred all my belongings there. I found a full-time job and started working immediately. I had been ignoring calls and messages from Tom, but 3 days later, after I got home, I checked my phone to find 50 missed calls. Reluctantly, I called back, only to be yelled at with furious intensity.
Where are you? Why haven't you come home? Why did you send the divorce papers without saying anything?
It's none of your business. As Tom was talking fast and furious, I responded to him, and he became even angrier.
Don't joke around. You're Michelle's mother, aren't you?
I involuntarily pulled the phone away from my ear.
You even refused Michelle's liver transplant. Get back to the hospital and re-register now.
No, I won't donate mine to her anymore. I spoke firmly, and I could hear Tom sigh over the phone.
Being stubborn over a fight like that is childish. It's disgraceful for someone your age.
Say whatever you want.
Nancy, don't you love your daughter?
We're strangers, aren't we? Besides, I've never once thought she was cute since we got married. I let out all my true feelings. Did you submit the divorce papers, by the way?
Of course not. If we divorce, you'll no longer be a relative, and you won't be able to donate.
Tom's irritated response made me sigh. Why are you so fixated on me? You're her biological father. You should be the donor. Tom dismissively brushed off what seemed like an obvious suggestion.
Because I hate pain, remember? And aren't there after effects from surgery?
It seems so.
Then I'm passing on that. Michelle's life isn't in immediate danger anyway. If you refuse, we'll just wait for another donor.
Well, it's clear now. He cares more about himself than his daughter. Tom's insistence was so self-centered it was astonishing. I'll visit the hospital room next week. There's something we need to discuss. I said that and hung up the phone. A week later, I went to Michelle's hospital room as promised, and she started yelling the moment she saw me.
You old woman. Don't just go off on your own. Get back to the doctor and re-register as a donor now.
Is this how you ask for a favor? I was dismayed. The dad and child are utterly clueless. What? No, you're the one who told me that you don't need me, and you want to get divorced and leave.
That was just a slip of the tongue.
Michelle stammered her excuses.
I don't want my parents to split up because of me, right, Dad? Dad, you don't really want to divorce Nancy, do you?
Usually, she calls me old lady or aunt, but now she uses my name when it suits her. Seeing Michelle appeal to Tom with puppy eyes, Tom nodded so vigorously it looked like his head might fall off.
Of course. I want to stay together happily as a family.
Tom said with a pasted smile. I handed him the photos and the investigation report I had pulled from my bag. Oh really? But it seems like Michelle has another happy family. Michelle's face turned pale as she peered at the photo.
Hey, Michelle, you've been meeting him behind my back?
Tom's question was tinged with anger, and Michelle responded hesitantly.
Well,
Tom slammed the photo down on the hospital room table. In the picture, Michelle was with a plump woman and a slim man in a suit. Obviously, she was enjoying a meal together at a restaurant, and it was likely taken covertly from a nearby table. Another photo showed the three of them, beaming as they walked down a major street, hands full of high-end shopping bags.
hey, how did you know I was meeting with my mom and her new husband? Having a detective agency investigate me? That's so mean of you.
Michelle snapped back, and I explained. When I was cleaning, I went into your room and noticed all those brand bags. You don't even have a job, so where did all that money come from?
Just leave me alone.
I can't just ignore it. I am your mother after all. I smiled at Michelle and she glared back at me. Also, there were times you'd come home from eating out, reeking of perfume. You said you were out with friends, but I knew that was a lie.
I didn't notice at all.
As Tom tilted his head, Michelle pursed her lips in response.
It was always when I was already home from taking a shower or late on weekends.
Oh, is that so?
Tom scratched his head and laughed. That's why I felt suspicious multiple times and hired a detective. It turns out you weren't hanging out with bad friends, which is a relief.
Mind your own business. Sorry, Dad. I couldn't refuse Mom when she insisted.
Michelle tried to sweet-talk Tom with a flattering smile.
Yeah, I get it.
Tom said with a forced smile. However, his smile faded instantly after I played a recording.
Mom, our dad is such a cheapskate. He works for a big corporation, but he only gives me $100 a month for allowance. Can you believe that? I can barely buy one outfit. Living like this is so tough.
Michelle, this is very tough for you, but just bear with it for now. And in the future, you can marry a businessman like my darling.
A man's voice joined in with Michelle's mother, speaking in a similarly saccharine tone.
Michelle, you should come live with us. I'll buy you anything you want.
But then I'd have to move and I wouldn't see my friends anymore. And it'd be sad to leave Dad alone, right? He hardly has any friends.
That's so true. You're too kind not to abandon Dad.
The three of them laughed uproariously, turning Tom's ears red. Michelle turned pale and curled up on the bed.
Michelle, this is pretty bad, Tom finally said after a long silence.
After a moment of silence, Tom opened his mouth.
You know the reason we divorced was because Mom cheated with him, right? And now you're secretly meeting up with him.
His tone was calm, but his eyes were filled with anger, making Michelle flustered.
But Mom's new husband is a really nice guy. He buys me everything I want and takes me to fancy restaurants. Honestly, I think Mom made the right choice remarrying him.
In her panic, Michelle dug herself deeper.
Dad even hates going to conveyor belt sushi, despite working for such a big company. Why don't we have money? It's not like I see Dad gambling.
Then Tom's face twisted with anger.
Kids shouldn't worry about that. It's probably because you've been eating fancy meals behind my back every month that you ended up with hepatitis C leading to cirrhosis. From now on, meeting them is forbidden.
Don't you know? Even if you divorce, children still have the right to see their parents.
Michelle retorted stubbornly.
I had hoped marrying this woman would mean a better salary and more luxury. But all I got was a meager allowance, no eating out, and more nagging from the old lady. There's no point in staying at home.
That's how you were buttering me up during our engagement. One mystery was solved, and I felt relieved. I let out a slight smile, and Timo spoke to Michelle with a smug look.
Listen, I'm working my butt off to support you. You think I enjoy doing overtime and business trips?
But Dad,
I'm saving up for your future. Isn't that more important than living luxuriously now?
I stared at Tom as he lectured Michelle.
What's up?
Tom asked, looking displeased, and I smiled. I talked to your boss the other day. Remember, I used to work in the same department with you, so I know him?
What did you talk about?
Michelle also listened intently. I mentioned that you've been too busy to be at home much. I asked if there was any way to reduce your overtime, weekend work, and trips. He seemed puzzled. Tom suddenly avoided my gaze. He probably knew what was going to be said next. The boss said, "Our department is actually slow right now. Hardly any overtime or weekend work, and definitely no business trips. Everyone's leaving on time every day. Strange, isn't it?" Then I fiddled with my phone, bringing up an image. I also pulled out several photos and a report from my bag, placing them next to documents about Michelle. "Wow, you're a regular at a bar in the downtown area, going there 4 nights a week after work? No wonder you're home late at night." Michelle's eyes widened as she snatched the report from my hand. As she read through the document, her expression turned demonic. Michelle was holding the documents with her trembling hands, and she read aloud in a low voice.
On the weekends, Tom spent at an apartment bought for a 20-year-old woman, staying till morning, occasionally accompanying her to work. Every 2 or 3 months, going on trips.
It's like you're living together. Do you even realize your wife and daughter are waiting at home?
It's my salary, and I can spend it however I want.
Tom retorted, sulking.
I am supporting a girl because she was saving for college, so I need to visit often and help increase her salary. Supporting hard-working kids is just what decent people do, right? It's like volunteering.
I snorted at Tom's brazenness. "So, this is the same apartment complex as Anna, huh? It seems you've been seen getting cozy in the lobby and shopping at the local supermarket. It's become quite the talk among the residents."
As a handsome man and a beautiful woman?
"Don't be ridiculous, no." I scoffed at him. "It's actually quite the joke. An old man drooling over a girl young enough to be his daughter. It's embarrassing. It's no wonder I'm beyond angry. I'm astonished you'd stoop so low." Tom's eyes widened in anger.
Stop calling it an affair. I genuinely love her.
Gross.
Michelle blurted out, her face contorting in disgust.
Dad, are you serious? Falling for a woman with the same as my age. What's wrong with you?
Be quiet. Let me have my love life at least.
Tom retorted with a defiant look. He continued passionately, despite the frustration evident on both my and Michelle's faces.
She says she wants to marry me after she graduates. Michelle, you will be happier. You're going to have a young and beautiful mom.
Tom's mischievous grin elicited a sigh of exasperation from Michelle.
Dad, wake up. She's just gold digging. A mom only 3 years older? That's just a joke.
I don't care if you approve, Michelle. I'm marrying her anyway.
Don't joke around. If you're going to spend money on some woman, at least increase my allowance. Am I less important than her?
Michelle yelled at Tom, and he coolly replied,
No, Michelle. You're more important. But it seems you could live just fine as long as your liver is healthy.
Michelle glared at me sharply.
That's right. I don't mind if you get divorced, but give me your liver first.
She got off the bed and grabbed my arm with a strength not befitting a sick person, showering me with insults.
The liver can regenerate, right? So don't be stingy. Give it to me. You're my mother. At least be useful for once, you idiot.
Is this why, after all these 5 years, I've tried my best for you and Dad, I'm now subjected to this kind of extortion? I said, disgusted, and Tom smirked.
Scared of the surgery now? Nancy is not only a coward, but a hypocrite. Pathetic.
I've mentioned this before, but if that's the case, you should be the one to take the lead and do it yourself. I snapped back, and Michelle defended Tom.
Dad was incompatible. It can't be helped, right?
Yeah, sorry, Michelle.
Tom apologized deeply, assuming a posture of apology. Exasperated, I pressed the play button on my phone app.
So, I hate pain, and there might be after effects from surgery.
It seems so.
Then I pass. If Michelle isn't in immediate danger, we can wait for another donor.
Hearing the recording, Michelle looked bewildered.
What?
That's how your dad really feels. He never even took the compatibility test. If you doubt it, ask the doctor. Michelle awkwardly turned her head to look at Tom. Tom was sweating profusely, with his mouth opened and closed, but said nothing. In the end, he loves himself more than his daughter.
No, that's not it.
Michelle's eyes quickly filled with tears.
It's awful. I only trusted Dad.
As Michelle's voice trembled, Tom insensitively blurted out even more thoughtless words.
But I like thinner girls. And Michelle, you eat like your mother and keep getting fatter, don't you? It's your own fault that you got sick.
Tom scratched his cheek, showing no signs of a caring father.
Why don't you ask Mom?
Tom said this confidently, clapping his hands together, and Michelle frowned in response.
Dad, have you forgotten? Mom has diabetes and high blood pressure, so it was never possible in the first place.
Right.
Tom realized, having completely forgotten that his ex-wife had these conditions. After a moment of looking at each other, Tom and Michelle suddenly knelt on the floor in front of me, looking determined.
Please, Nancy, give Michelle your liver. I absolutely refuse to do it.
You're our only option. As your daughter, I'm begging you, just say yes. And if you refuse, I'll tell everyone at the hospital that Dad's new partner did something terrible to me.
Enough! I shouted down at them. How many times do I have to say it? I will never register as a donor for you again. I won't be treated like a servant, abused, and then have my liver taken too. That's ridiculous.
Are you still holding that grudge? You're awful.
I was annoyed, so I crouched down, reached under the bed, and grabbed a bag of snack foods. I brushed off Michelle's hand as she tried to take it from me, clutching the snacks as I walked into the hallway. I headed straight for the nurse's station and called out loudly, "Michelle is eating potato chips again." Before I could finish, a nurse rushed over, her face twisted in anger.
Michelle, how many times do we have to tell you? With this behavior, even if a donor appears, a transplant would be impossible.
I'm sorry.
Please, Dad, pay attention. You should act like a father.
As I left the hospital room with a smile, I passed by the downcast figures of Tom and Michelle. Despite being forbidden by the doctor, Michelle had been secretly eating snacks and drinking sodas other than the hospital meals. Her lab values were so poor due to her overeating that her treatment was prolonged and she had to take a break from school. Nurses had suggested Tom at least undergo donor compatibility testing, but he adamantly refused, which enraged Michelle.
He spends money and affection on his mistress, but refuses to help me. I won't rely on Dad anymore.
I hate it. We can just wait until a donor appears, right?
Is that what a parent says? Unbelievable.
The two of them argued daily in the hospital room, completely estranging their relationship. Later, Tom signed and returned the divorce papers I had sent him. I promptly submitted them to the court, and our divorce was finalized. I also received a one-time payment of $10,000 as compensation for his affair with a woman who worked at a bar, which was a relief. However, the real problem was after the divorce. Tom continued to pester me. He knew where I worked, so he would wait for me at the nearest station to my office, begging to reconcile.
Look, I really need you, Nancy. Let's try again. Michelle's medical bills must be costing a lot, right? After paying you the alimony, I've run out of savings.
The reason you're out of savings is because you were supporting your affair. You should ask her for money. I responded coolly.
That's the thing. She dumped me when she found out I was married. Michelle won't even talk to me. I'm so lonely.
You brought this on yourself. If you keep following me, I'll call the police. Finally, after my stern warning, Tom stopped showing up. His affair with a 20-year-old girl while lying about being single became known at his company, and his reputation plummeted. Now he is said to be living a corporate life as if sitting on a bed of nails. Michelle was telling her mother about her hospitalization, and she bragged about her misdeeds up to canceling my donor registration, which led to complaints. Her mother was dismayed by her behavior, coldly replied,
I never thought Michelle couldn't be grateful to others. I'm disappointed. I had thought about living together, but let's forget it. Get along with your father.
Reading this, Michelle burst into tears and lashed out at the nurses. She's now known as the ward's troublemaker. Since I canceled my donor registration, no new donor has appeared. Michelle's condition has continued to worsen, compounded by her previous excessive eating and drinking. She started to follow her dietary therapy in a panic, but it was already too late. Now, she lives under the constant threat of potentially developing liver cancer at any moment, as warned by her doctor. I hear she is living her hospital life in fear, often breaking down in tears. Over these past 5 years, I've really come to understand something. No matter how much you give, some people will never truly perceive your sincerity. Although I've had some tough times, there were also good encounters. I grew close to a colleague who supported me when I was down, and after dating, we got remarried. Instead of a wedding ceremony, we had a house party where Anna and my parents got to know my new partner's sincere and kind personality, and they were visibly relieved. With my wonderful husband, I hope to build a happy home